Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can tell from the intro, we're going to talk about Star Wars today and EA's latest culling of the franchise that they're supposedly looking after in terms of video games. So, without further ado, let's jump into the video. A few years ago, EA signed a contract with Disney and Lucasfilm to be able to exclusively produce video games for the Star Wars franchise, and that deal is supposed to last about 10 years. They signed that in 2013, and so far to date, in 5 years, they've only brought out 2 console games or AAA games and 1 mobile game. Attached to that is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, or the Old Republic online game, but it doesn't really count, seeing as though that came out way before the deal was ever signed for. So that's where we're at today. We know that EA is supposed to be working on a few games in the pipelines, but 2 of those games have been cancelled now. One which was being headed up by Visual Studios, God rest their souls, that's now been closed, headed by Amy Hennig. It was going to be a Uncharted meets Star Wars kind of universe where you're going to take charge of a team of rebel-y type peoples and mercenaries and scoundrels, exploring these different worlds and having a single-player narrative. It was going to be quite linear. EA didn't like that. I'm pretty sure it's because they couldn't get any microtransactions in it. According to Kotaku and Jason Schreier, who did some investigation on the cancellation of this game, they were pretty much saying, well, FIFA Ultimate Team makes $1 billion a year. Where's your version of that? And when you're kind of trying to make a game for a franchise like Star Wars and end up posing that question, you're not ever going to come up with a good solution. So eventually, unfortunately, it was canned. Amy Hennig left the studio. Visual got shut down. The assets from that game were then taken and shipped to EA Vancouver, who was going to be working on the project to kind of use those things and maybe try and come up with a game out of that. This was then later codenamed Project Orca, I believe, and we've just had news that that's been cancelled as well. EA seems to be shifting its focus away from investing in the Star Wars franchise and actually kind of just trying to churn out something in a quicker period. They've said that the reason that the game has been cancelled, from the sources in an article by Kotaku and Jason Schreier, which I'll link below, that they thought the project was going to take too long and they wanted something that's going to come out by 2020, possibly something to coincide with the new release of the next generation of consoles. What that project's going to be now, I don't know, but I just don't understand why EA is fumbling these rights so much like they are. They have a goldmine of things to explore, different areas they could go to. I know they've got restrictions from Lucasfilm of what they're allowed to kind of go into, and as long as it fits in with the greater narrative that Disney's trying to sell with the new Star Wars franchise. But there's a lot of things they could have done by now. If you look back at the same time period before LucasArts shut down and before the EA contract was signed, we were in a bit of a golden age of video games. We had things like The Force Unleashed, Force Unleashed 2, we had Republic Commando, Empire at War, we had the Jedi Outcast series, we had Star Wars Knights of the Republic 1 and 2. You know, some really great video games out there. Yeah, okay, maybe there wasn't, some were better than others, but we still had a lot of content, and it was coming from multiple sources, because the way that LucasArts dealt with this was to kind of say, okay, you want to make a video game for us? Here is our assets, here's our license, off you go. You have freedom to do what you want. I know it's a little bit different with EA and Disney's going to be a little bit more like, oh, you can't do this, or you can't say that, or you can't explore this era because we've got that saved for books, films, comics, all those kind of things. But EA could have done more than that now. In the 5 years, they've brought out 2 games, 1 mobile game. I just don't think it's good enough. When you dig into this a little bit further, we see that some of the comments coming from the top heads like Andrew Wilson is that they're not really interested in this franchise. They don't really want to do much with it. They want to continue to focus on the brands and the IPs that they already own. So they want to do their FIFAs, they want to do the Battlefields, they want to use those monetization structures to keep their business going, keep the money coming in. They're not really that bothered about a Star Wars game. If you released one great Star Wars game and made $1 billion, they wouldn't care unless they could get that over and over and over again. Now, I know we have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to look forward to at the end of this year, but you know, it's January and we've still not seen any footage, we've still not seen any gameplay, there's no trailers, nothing. And when you look at games like Red Dead Redemption, you look at things like Spider-Man, God of War, they were really gearing up years before release, kind of throwing out their little tidbits, little gameplays, in-game engine footage, those kind of things. You know, we've not had anything like that from EA in 2 years. Last time we saw that was in 2016, I think, which gave us like this insight into what they were working on with Visceral and all the other games and the other studios. We've not had anything since. So we have one game in development that we know about that's going to come out this year. There's a couple of other projects, a couple of other mobile games, and then EA just doesn't seem to want to do anything with it. By now, they could have had several Star Wars games out. If they hadn't have fumbled Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, they'd have two really strong first-person shooter games in the market, but they did that wrong. I just don't understand where they're going to go with this in the future. Well, I know it was a bit of a short video this today, guys, but that's the kind of Star Wars latest update in terms of their video games and what EA is, or what should I say, isn't doing with the franchise. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell to let you know when my next video is released, and keep an eye on me on all the streaming platforms on YouTube, Twitch, and on Mixer under the tag of Beardy Gamer, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Beardy Gamer. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.